Um, Good morning. My name is Keith Marzullo. I'm the Division Director for the Division of Computer Network Systems at the National Science Foundation. It's my division that manages the CyberPhysical Systems program, which is why you're all here. Last year we had an event similar to this. We did the Aspiring PIs meeting for our cybersecurity program, SATSI, which, like CPS, is a program that has a lot of interest. People would like to be funded, but it's an unusual program. And so the funding rates are not as high as we'd like them to be. People are trying and not being successful. So it was a big success in SATSI. We'll be doing it again. If you're also interested in cybersecurity, you should keep your eyes open for our SATSI Aspiring PI program. But this is our first time we've done it for CPS. As you know, the issue with CPS is it's kind of systems science, and as we portray it, we often use this daisy diagram that shows these various sectors: energy, biomedical devices, smart buildings, vertical farming, autonomous vehicles. These are all things that fall into CPS, but in reality what we're funding is the core, the thing that's common across all these sectors. And so we find often as we get proposals in that there is some misunderstanding. What are the things we're looking for versus what are the things that you're able to do? So hence we're doing this program. So I'm really delighted you're here. I'm hoping this will prove to be a great way for you to understand what we're looking for, as well as for us, of course, to hear what you're doing. And from this will increase your abilities to get funding from the CPS program. And on that note, I'm going to turn over to the program officers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for coming. I just got back in here yesterday. I had the intelligence to get out of DC on Wednesday, so I missed all the snow and was disappointed to see it's still here. So what I'm going to do is give a brief program overview, kind of give some of our philosophy. We'll be showing the DAISY diagram that Keith talked about. Ted Baker is one of the other CPS program directors that's here, is going to talk about, essentially go through a panel brief that we give on our CPS proposal review panels to help kind of tell you what the evaluators are looking at. And what I wanted to do first is give you my view of what our purpose is. So it's to give you all a better understanding of what the CPS program is and how your research might fit into it. We want to give you some insights into the proposal evaluation process, provide you some introductions to who is in the CPS team at NSF, and our aim is that we end up with a number of CPS proposals that better fit the solicitation. And when we say that, what we really mean is that we are looking for that core science area, and don't just write us a great application proposal. Write us a core science proposal that has applicability across several different domains. And if it can transition, that's even better. So we're going to have a number of program managers from the CPS team. CPS team includes people from several different directorates at the National Science Foundation. Includes people from SCISE, Computer and Information Science and Engineering, as well as the engineering directorates. Within SCISE and engineering, multiple divisions are represented, and those the program directors from those divisions all provide very active program support, helping to build the solicitation, helping run panels in proposal evaluation, helping to create what we see as a real valuable and important portfolio, and help manage the programs as they're being executed. So from SCISE, part of the leadership team, we have Keith Marzullo, who just spoke, Erwin Gianchandani, who's the Deputy Division Director, Farnham Jahanian, who's our assistant director for size, who actually has important influence in what we do as we create the portfolio. Ted Baker, who's here right now, Shankar Basu, who should be here later, me, Tiaga Nanda Gopal, Min Song, all of those are from Computer Network Systems. Phil Regalia, who's from CCF. Frank Olkin, who I think may not make it here. Sylvia Spangler, who will be here and will participate in a number of the one-on-ones. Ralph Wachter from CNS will be here later, I think this afternoon. Toe, who's in the back, is a AAAS fellow who's helping us with the CPS program this year. And we've kind of added a new member of our team, Anindya Banerjee, who's from the ACI division, so Advanced Cyber Infrastructure, is helping us this year. He has a strong interest in formal models. In the engineering, we have a variety of program directors. Some of you know these people from some of the control proposals that you might write. Radhakrishan Bahidi, Jerry Tian, Bruce Hamilton, and Bruce Kramer. Bruce Kramer will be here, I think, tomorrow morning, and his background is manufacturing and design. And so what you'll see is that we in the CPS team come with a pretty diverse set of backgrounds. Part of my background is basically system science, mathematics, controls, and communications, and a lot of time spent in the aerospace industry. So we have both academic as well as a number of industrial experiences. So what do we need CPS for? So when the program was put together, probably around mid-2000s, I think the first solicitation was around 2009 that came out. Some of the opportunities were driven by, one, can cyber-physical systems contribute to reductions in automotive accidents? Can we eventually achieve a zero accident state? One of the things that you look at is automobiles and airplanes are cyber-physical systems on a grand scale. So they include tens to hundreds of processors, large numbers of sensors and actuators that respond to the physical environment. There's highway congestion, so can cyber physical systems help manage the flow of traffic? Can it provide information that leads to better routing, better decision making? Can it help in relieving airspace congestion, enable safe integration of unmanned vehicles within the U.S. airspace? There's a mandate, I think that's in 2015, we're going to have unmanned vehicles flying in controlled airspace. Can we provide an adaptive, resilient, efficient energy distribution system that includes renewables and other energy sources? If you've attended any of our 3 workshops that we've had just recently, we had a cyber physical systems in energy workshop, cyber physical systems in transportation, and just recently in medical devices. What you really see is that CPS are key elements of those systems. They enable those systems to do marvelous things. In the manufacturing area, they can provide dramatic reductions in time to design and manufacture complex systems. You might look at a manufacturing system as, at a simple level, it's a machine tool with a computer and sensors that identify what the tool is doing as it works in the material. You combine those together into a cell of manufacturing units, and eventually into a whole factory. And so much the same way that an airplane consists of multiple systems working together, factories are basically large cyber-physical systems. And agriculture. One of the things that's very interesting is if you talk to people in Department of Agriculture, one of the things that they talk about is that there's a 50% food loss between production and consumption of food. And the question is, can CPS technologies aid both in the distribution, in the actual production of food goods, and really make a dent on reducing that 50% loss? And you can imagine the savings in dollars, the savings in people's lives can really be astounding based on these kind of numbers. So CPS program was created in response to a variety of national priorities and challenges. So in the transportation sector, faster and safer aircraft, energy, trying to develop a better energy distribution system, looking at homes as cyber-physical systems. Can we reduce energy consumption within the home, within the neighborhood, and within a whole city? Can we improve healthcare, and can we provide a very resilient and reliable power energy grid and traffic infrastructure? So CPS contain three things. So they include cyber elements, the computing, communication, and control. Can be discrete, they're logical, they could be switched. They have to interact with the physical world. So physical environment includes number of physical laws that control the behaviors of these systems. And CPS really are the integration of those. So again, you have systems that communicate, systems that sense the physical environment, and systems that then provide actuation and control. And what we like to see in our CPS is really not just systems that operate open loop. You sense the system and just continue on your merry way. What we like to see are closed loop systems that actually take into account what you sense, adapt the control laws to it. So CPS are cyber in every physical component, networked at multiple and extreme scales. So again, you may look at an engine, an aircraft engine, many different sensors on that, many processors, many different time scales on an airplane, ranging from the time scales for flight critical software, so the flight controls can be milliseconds down to seconds for less time critical systems. We like systems that can dynamically reorganize and reconfigure. So you can imagine systems that sense damage on an airplane, sense damage on a wing, and adapt the control laws to still both maintain safe and efficient flight. High degrees of automation, unconventional computational physical substrates. Operations dependable, it's certifiable in some cases. Is that my phone? Yeah. That's probably someone calling to say that they can't be here. So my problem is I don't know how to turn off that one sound. So one of the important things is many of these systems are safety critical. So their behaviors need to be verifiable. In some instances, they undergo rigorous certification processes, like, for example, through the FAA. And again, closing the loop, especially at real-time rates in systems that are safety critical. Now, not all our systems need to close the loop at these very fast or real-time rates. You know, there could be systems in which the human interacts with the system and uses information that's provided by vehicles and by their sensors and helps to become then part of the system. So we look at mixed initiative systems, and then we look at how do you verify these mixed initiative systems. So humans interacting with cyber-physical systems and be able to do that in a safe and predictable way. So after we say what are cyber-physical systems, what aren't, you know, your normal desktop environment is not. High performance, high-end computing, supercomputing aren't CPS. Neither are basically just simple, isolated, embedded real-time components. Isolated sensor nets in which you don't have actuation or control aren't really cyber-physical systems. And when you put together proposals, think about having all those components together, the sensing, the networking, computing, and the control. CPS aren't simply cyber that's just bolted onto these systems. And they're not just simulations or models of physical systems, or not simple data acquisition systems. This is a chart that Keith was referring to, and the interesting thing is we usually change this chart so that at the top is the domain of the people that we're briefing. But what this shows is that there are many different application domains for cyber-physical systems. We've talked about them: energy, agriculture, manufacturing, automotive, medical. All of those really have a common core of technologies that are extremely important to them. So they have core science in the area of control, verification of behaviors. They're real-time systems that have to operate. They are networked, and they have to operate securely. And one of the areas that is becoming of particular interest to us in the CPS domain, in the CPS program, is the security of those systems. And CPS security is very different than enterprise network security. So we're interested in things like, how do you design systems to be secure? What does it mean to have a secure cyber-physical system? Remember things like, you know, if you're talking about an automobile, you can't run antivirus. You're not going to run your Norton antivirus software on it. You know, one of the things that, you know, manufacturers don't build huge reserves of processing power into these system elements. And you don't have enough space and time to put antivirus. You have systems that essentially you can't require frequent updates, like doing a semantic live update every few seconds. Those kinds of things don't work. So you got to look at, what does CPS security mean as you develop these systems? And these systems also include interactions with people in the energy domain. They may have information that talks about the pattern of usage of electricity in a home. So, or in an automobile, there's information that could be done in vehicle to infrastructure. So there are privacy issues that come out. And we're interested in some of the core science related to that. So this chart just kind of summarizes what we hope to achieve in this cyber-physical system program. Overcome technical challenges, design systems that can be certifiable and dependable systems like Keith Marzullo likes to talk about systems that you can bet your life on. And that's really what we're talking about as we look at the technologies for CPS. They're systems that we really depend on. They carry us around. They provide the energy for our systems. They provide they support the health care of us. And they're really a very important and vital part of our life. What we want to do in our program, develop the science and technology for building and securing those systems, develop the unified foundations, the models, and the tools that enable us to both design, develop, create, and verify those systems. So just some useful information on the scope of the CPS program. There were over 300 proposals in 2013 for the 2013 solicitation. We had 3 types of programs, and Ted's going to go through some more detail on those. We had 1 Frontiers panel, 2 Breakthrough panels, and more than 10 Synergy panels, and over 30 awards. And one of the things that I'm kind of passionate about in this is we provide access to us as you develop your proposal ideas and kind of look at what you should consider as you construct your proposal and as you discuss it with a program director today, or if you call us or come visit us. So the things that you should look at is, how are we really expanding CPS foundations? So is the work that your idea really looking to expand the boundaries of CPS science? Or are you just proposing a very interesting, probably very cool CPS application? If you're just proposing a great application, CPS program may not be the right place for it. And including a quote from one of my favorite movies to kind of drive that point home. It's, if you remember the movie Pulp Fiction, and there was a statement that one of the people made: just because you are a character doesn't mean you have character. Just because it's a CPS application doesn't really mean you're proposing CPS science. So that's something to really remember as you put together your idea. So think about what you're trying to do, what are your objectives, and importantly, don't go directly into jargon. This is something that I learned in industry where we would have to defend IRAD, internal R&D projects. And the first time that someone used the word ontology, it completely lost the president of the company, and they lost $2 million of money. It is a hard lesson. So how do you do this today? So what are the limits of current practice? What's new in your approach? And why do you think it'll be successful? An important thing to think about is, we're still talking about the core science, but the core science also looks at applicability across multiple domains. So the thing to think about is, who really cares? Are you proposing something that no one won't ever find a home? So think about who will care, what application domains might be able to take advantage of it. What's new in your approach? If you're successful, what difference is it going to make? What are the risks and payoffs of it? This part, how much will it cost? It's only an ancillary factor, but one of the things in our proposals, we have 3 categories. They're also broken, include various funding levels. On our Frontiers last year was Frontiers top was $7 million. Synergy top was $1 million, and Breakthroughs was $500,000. Just because you can bid $7 million doesn't mean you should build $7 million. Yeah, think about, is the project that you're looking to create, is it a $2 million project? That can be great. Is it a $4 million project? That can be great. Don't artificially say, I've got this project, I need to hit this top line. Do it if it really contributes to creating this very important integrated program, but don't necessarily look at that top line as, I've got to bid that top line. So think about that. How long will it take? Our Breakthroughs are up to 3 years, Synergies up to 4 years, and Frontiers up to 5 years. Think about, in those Frontiers, in those Synergies especially, the back part of it, what kind of experimentation can I do? How can I advance the science and advance it into some of these application domains earlier than maybe I thought I could? What kind of midterm and final exams, what kind of interesting demonstrations can you perform that really show that we're doing really great stuff and it's actually gelling into something that's very interesting and inviting? So things to think about. One, I mentioned we had a series of workshops in 2013 and 2014. Several of you attended some of those. Energy, transportation, medical devices. I would encourage you, I think that a lot of the presentations from those are online, I'd say on the CPSVO. So do some hunting and see what kind of things were ideas. CPS and security is a very important theme for us. And let me turn it over to Ted, who will talk to you about panels. Okay. Any questions before? Okay. We look forward to rest of today and tomorrow, hearing some of your ideas and participating in panels. And don't be shy, even though there's you're recording, don't be shy about asking questions, because this meeting is not for us as much as it is for you. And if you leave here with some burning questions that you should have asked, it's on you. Okay.
I've been introduced, so I don't have to introduce myself. Okay. This is an abbreviated set of slides from last year's cycle of review. So it will not be up to date with respect to the new solicitation. And so I'm going to start by talking about that for just a second here. As you probably should all know, we were delayed in getting the solicitation out this year by a number of things, including the government shutdown and multiple agency approvals. It's still not out. David is optimistic it might come out this week. Keith thinks so too. We all hope it's going to come out real soon. I've been optimistic it's going to come out this week for the past month. So it's not a promise, right? But we expect it'll come out soon. You'll have 90 days to submit proposals. The solicitation is very similar to the previous solicitation, but you have to be very careful. Don't assume anything is identical. One thing I just pointed out right now is if you were planning on writing 20 pages for a synergy proposal, cut it down to 15. That was a mistake last year that we tried out. There will be other agencies involved this year, so be careful to read all the way through the solicitation and see what it says about cooperation with other agencies. Do a diff between the old solicitation and the new one if you started to write a proposal based on the old solicitation to make sure you've got all the differences. But these slides are based on the old solicitation for two reasons. One, As I said, the new one's not released yet. It would be a mistake for us to write slides to something that hasn't been released if we're not releasing it. Two, this is realistic. It's something we actually did, whereas if we conjecture about what we're going to do in the next cycle, that would be just that. We start out by introducing peoples, but you've already seen this list and gone through it. You've seen this slide. David went through it with you before. We go through these slides. There are three categories of system science that we're interested in here. Big pitfall that we try to get panelists past, and which you should all get past, is that just because it's engineering, just because it's CPS, just because it's science, or just because technology doesn't mean it's appropriate for funding this program. We have some specific targets. I'm not going to talk through all these slides, but these are the things the panelists are asked to read, and we go through with them. Overview about what an engineering system is, the CPS program, and notice the emphasis on core system science there. Keith said that at the beginning. David reiterated it, and I'll reiterate it again. Core system science, that's really the biggest hang-up for most people writing proposals. They do not have a clear statement of what is the core system science that they're proposing. This is a slide we use with things that are not cyber-physical systems. I'm not going to go through all of them, but notice a few. A sensor net might be a cyber-physical system, but it's not interesting in itself enough for this program. Systems that have clear separation of boundaries between the cyber and the physical, where you take the cyber control system and bolt it on top of the physical system, is not a cyber-physical system. Data acquisition and control by itself is probably our cyber-physical systems, but not of interest for this program unless there's some new core cyber-physical system science. This slide you've seen before, but again, that dotted line around the center is really what we're funding. If it's out on the lobes, that may be really interesting, but it's not something that this NSF program is likely to fund. We are not interested in research that advances only a single domain. Again, this is a pitfall. People will write a proposal on some CPS area like smart grid, transportation systems, medical CPS, and it has great science in medical systems or in transportation. So maybe some great algorithms for understanding how traffic flows in a city. And maybe they're going to build a CPS around it, but that's not going to sell it for this program because it's only one domain. Educational workforce is important. Do not minimize it, but I'm not going to spend time talking about this. The panelists will see all of these slides, though. This is important. As you know, if you've served on an NSF panel, intellectual merit and broader impacts are both important for NSF funding. You also know that people, when they write proposals, tend to focus mostly on intellectual merit and spend most of their pages on it. That's okay. But don't forget the broader impacts. And for CPS, the broader impacts are particularly important because this is the motivation for the program. You saw the list from David of all the application areas, all the good things for society we hope are going to come out of these cyber-physical systems. So it's easy to write a strong statement on broader impacts, and it's important. What's interesting here is, I think the next, let's see, whoops. Yes, this slide. In 2013, without a lot of fanfare, the NSF changed the way we review proposals in a subtle way. These bullets apply to both intellectual merit and broader impact. And a lot of our panelists coming in aren't thinking in those terms, so we emphasize this for them. The bullets, it says, to what extent do the activities suggest and explore creative, original, and potentially transformative concepts? In short, creativity, originality should apply to the broader impact portion of your proposal as well as the intellectual merit aspects. The reviewers will be asked to comment on that. Likewise, for broader impacts, it's not sufficient to say, oh, I have this activity, I'm going to do it, without some plan. They're supposed to evaluate the realism of your plan and whether you've laid out something that's actionable rather than just a claim you're going to do something. The team organization, the membership, who's going to do it? If you say you're going to do an activity, oh, I'm going to hold a workshop. to bring in industry and get their involvement and transition this technology to practice. Well, you better say who's going to do the workshop, when is it going to happen, how much is it going to cost, where are you going to invite the people for it. Don't just one sentence put in the workshop. Because the NSF evaluation criteria say that the panelists have to evaluate all aspects of the proposal with respect to all 4 of these elements. This is very important in every solicitation. You always go to the back of the solicitation after all the boilerplate and read the section on solicitation-specific review criteria. That's what really differentiates one solicitation from another. The general review criteria apply to all NSF proposals and all NSF programs. For us, this line that I've underlined here, is the killer for most proposals. And the panelists are told to pay careful attention to it. Is it applicable to more than one application domain? And then the extent to which they address specific CPS research target areas. This, again, is a big pitfall. Everything, as I said earlier, is science, technology, or engineering that we get. So just saying I'm doing science and it's CPS is not the answer to the question we're asking. If you read the solicitation and read the new one, this is based on the old one, there are paragraphs under there that say the specific kinds of problems with general systems nature that we see in cyber-physical systems, and we're hoping that the research will address. They're not exclusive lists, but they should give you an idea of what we mean by general system science and general problems. So, for example, under technology, supports design, analysis, verification using principled CPS building blocks. This is something general. I'm not going to read through all of these with you, but again, if you're a panelist, you would be asked to read this before the panel, and if you had questions, we'd be going through these during the panel. But the emphasis here is that just science, just technology, just engineering is not what we're looking for. We're looking for general system science, technology, and engineering that cuts across multiple domains of cyber-physical science. We have 3 kinds of proposals. I think this is mostly the same this year. Again, check for small changes. The breakthrough proposals traditionally were supposed to be game-changing proposals. High risk, high payoff, very creative, things that are not incremental, haven't been done before, where a small amount of money is appropriate to explore feasibility and do a proof of concept. The first year we put this breakthrough category in, we've only funded initially 1 proposal, and then we decided to fund another one. The second year, we broadened the language and said it includes new approaches to bridge computing, communication, and control. And if we felt it made a contribution in bridging computing, communication, and control, we funded it, and we ended up funding about the same level as the rest of the categories of proposals last year. I can't tell you what's going to happen next year, but probably last year is a better indication than the 2 years ago. But remember, it's not just a project that happens to be small. And there are special requirements in the proposal. But again, look at the new one. Okay, synergy proposal. This has been the main emphasis of this program, I think, in terms of the number of grants that we've put out and the number of dollars we put out. We're looking for cross-disciplinary research, so there has to have at least 2 different disciplines involved. But there has to be integration. They can't be separated. This is the guy in discipline X. This is the guy in discipline Y. They write the proposal together. They divide up the money. They go off and do their research separately, and maybe at the end of the project they have this grand integration, everything's going to go together. That may or may not actually happen. We're looking for continual synergy throughout the life of the project. And it has to include a validation plan. And the picture for the beer there is to emphasize that if you just take hops and barley and water and put them in a glass, it's not beer. Okay? There has to be a synergy there. Even if you add a little bit of yeast, it's not enough. Okay. Now, frontiers. As David said, the number of these funded each year is very small. It could be from 0 to maybe 2, but typically 1. The critical thing here is that these projects have to be of a nature that they cannot accomplish the research by dividing into smaller projects. So this typically means that the research is at a more advanced stage, is not high risk, high payoff anymore, because we're talking about a big investment of money here. There better be some substantial argument for that size of investment. But where if it can be partitioned, and going back to what I said about synergy before, this is even more true here. This is, and as David said, it's not a matter of a bandwagon. The more people you pile on, the more PIs, the more work tasks, the better chance it has of getting funded. No, it's integration. And is there, do you have an overarching idea that is ready for this amount of investment and money and has to be done as a single project because it couldn't be done by a set of smaller projects? And then, after you've figured out what that is, think about what the appropriate budget level is. Do not be tricked into thinking, oh, to be competitive, there's these other $7 million projects, and they're all going to have casts of all these illustrious PIs, and if I don't have as many PIs and as big a budget as they do and claim to do as much as they're claiming to do, then it won't get funded. That's fallacy. It's the quality of the idea and the size of, the intrinsic size of the idea that you're trying to tackle, not how many pieces you've added to the project. And again, we emphasize that because they're large, as the projects get larger, we're really interested in the plan for integration and management, that these are going to be carried out as unified projects. And these are additional requirements we go through only for the Frontiers panel. I mentioned transition to practice, sharing results, validation plan on an actual cyber-physical system. All of our proposals require, by the way, that there be validation through experimentation, but it may be for the smaller, shorter timescales. It's not practical to take it and carry it all the way through to experimentation on a full-scale cyber-physical system. And for the larger projects, we're required to have a larger and more comprehensive education outreach plan as a separate document. Here's a long list of musts that the panelists will read, and I think David had most of these on a previous slide. I'm going to mention a couple of these in just a tiny bit of detail. What is the specific contribution to CPS science and technology? That's general CPS science and technology, not transportation systems, energy systems, medical systems, okay? One or more of the three target areas, we talked about that. Explain how it fits the category of proposal is. Why is it a breakthrough? Why is it a synergy? Why is it a frontier? Integration of education and research is a standard thing. How is a team broken down? Who's going to do what? And how do they play together as a synergistic whole? What's the validation plan, dissemination plan? And this is the most important one for big proposals. If it's a collaboration plan, why is it a collaboration? Why did you take what is normally a problem, which is coordinating multiple institutions, and are willing to go through the extra handicap of having to work across multiple institutions? There must be an overriding reason that you couldn't do it with a single institution. Again, like I said before, if it's a large proposal, why does it need to be large? And same thing with multiple PIs. You know, how are you going to overcome this hurdle of having to communicate between multiple PIs and coordinate them, and overcome the hurdle of having to coordinate across multiple institutions? There must be some benefit. Explain clearly why you've gone this step and how you're going to deal with the coordination. Again, this is stuff the panelists are going to see. It's mostly things that David has already said. Again, the emphasis in red: do not solely address anecdotal case studies or just engineer a specific CPS. These are our panel procedures. I've abbreviated these a lot. I've deleted most of the slides. We normally talk about conflict of interest and confidentiality and all those things. But these are the, these are the three categories we rate proposals in. We tell panelists what you see on the slide. We warn the panelists that their recommendations are only advisory and that there are several levels of processing after the panel. We warn them that just because they rank something highly competitive doesn't mean it's going to get funded, or just because they rank something low competitive means it can't be funded. but this is their view of what they think ought to be funded. We have given this guideline of the highly competitive, and competitive should be not within the range up to 30% of the proposals. We tell them to think like an investor, not like a reviewer for a journal or a conference. They're investing government money, and we're expecting an outcome for it that's beneficial for society. But sometimes we have to balance portfolios just like investors do. So we program officers will choose to fund some proposals because they're in an area that we're not supporting other work. We may choose to not fund another proposal because we already have supported too much, we think, disproportionately in that area. The panelists need to look at this also and think about risk and payoff. We fund some proposals because they're necessary research, they're low risk, but they're important. Maybe incremental in some respects, but it's something that has to be done. We fund other research that seems very risky because we see a potential payoff. And usually the amount of money we're willing to invest depends on the level of risk. We warn panelists that if it's a high risk, high payoff proposal and it's really creative, it may not have all the preliminary results and details worked out. And so it may appear to be rougher. So I like to use this picture, which has on the left side a bunch of cut glass costume jewels that probably cost $1. And on the right, a very large, rough, uncut diamond that's probably worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay? And I remind the panelists that when they see a proposal, if it's polished and very well written, that's good. But if it's not polished, but there's true value in it, they should give it a high rating nevertheless, along with informing us that they may consider it somewhat high risk. I remind the panelists that they have multiple roles, that they're going to read the proposal and they're going to act as testament. They're going to testify as to what they found when they read the proposal. And if they liked it, they're going to be an advocate on the defense side. If they didn't like it, they're going to be a prosecutor. But at the end of the discussion, all the panelists are voting as a jury to decide what they think about the proposal. Okay, this is the last slide I have here. I feel we have to say something about this, but everything I say here is very tentative. And the main message is to talk to a program officer if you're interested in career in CPS. For the first year, we accepted career proposals in CPS within the CNS division. It was entirely CNS activity. As far as I know, we had some reviewers from outside CNS, but we handled the panels, we made the funding decisions within CNS. It did not include engineering. There was a conversation with Kishan Baheti, who's not in the room right now, but Kishan liked the idea of extending it to engineering in the next cycle, but nothing has been decided or talked about. So if you're at a career age and you're interested in career grants, talk to the program directors in the area where you find your home. So if you're an engineer, talk to Kishan and find out whether they're going to support career proposals. If you're in SIZE, talk to program officers in SIZE who are working at CPS to get advice. But remember, all the stuff we said about CPS proposals like synergy, breakthroughs, larges, all the specifics about the review of those proposals doesn't apply to career. The area is the same, but it is all being worked out as we work through it. And I would say this year, the proposals we funded that were submitted as CPS in career were in the areas that we normally support in SIZE. They were not, for example, if you're a transportation engineer and you say, I'm a CPS scientist, probably would have been a mistake to submit a career proposal to SIZE in that. But things changed. So talk to the program managers. It is an option this year. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Excellent. So thanks for those talks. Hopefully, you'll be able to go back and watch this video maybe before you submit your next CPS proposal and look through those slides and say, how do we stack up? Do we have any weak points? I know I think back to some of those briefings when I submit my own proposals, and it can be very useful to have that red team approach. And speaking of benefits, we're running 15 minutes ahead of schedule, which is good news. Comment? A plea. Do you want to come down? Yeah, come down and introduce.
I'm organizing a group within CPS to enhance diversity. You can tell perhaps by my gender, we started as a women in CPS, but we've expanded our horizons. And so I would love to have the names and cards of anyone who's interested in being part of that group. We hope to have activities at CPS Week and then perhaps ongoing activities through the year. So if you would, just form on me sometime during the meeting, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks, John.